Is it your position that what happened on January 6th was not an affront to our Constitution?
On the contrary, I think it was a terrible affront. I've called it an abomination. It disrupted one of the most important constitutional functions of our government, and we should not tolerate that. And the people that were responsible for assaulting our officers, the people who were responsible for vandalizing this sacred building, should have the book thrown at them. I've said that all along, and I think it was a mistake for the president not to differentiate between those people and the vast majority of people who, as I said, broke nothing, hurt nobody, and simply thought they were exercising their First Amendment rights.
So given that, why object to a simple amendment that simply seeks to probe, as an oversight matter, the very thing that you purport to disagree with? I mean, your point, right? You've called President Trump's pardon.
Yes, well, that is, but the pardon is.
I would hope you would support this particular amendment if that were the case.
The pardon is the exclusive prerogative of the executive under our Constitution.
I see. Well,
and I do believe in that separation of powers.
I would simply say, Mr. McClintock, again, I have great respect for you, but I don't know how you can make that argument in a straightforward way to make the case that you disagree with these pardons and you believe that they shouldn't have been granted, but you object to a mere investigation or any kind of oversight by this particular
We have no authority to
in regards
investigate the exclusive prerogative of the executive.
Right. Well, let me, in a moment, Mr. Chairman, but I'm enjoying my colloquy with Mr. McClintock. Would you describe what happened on January 6th, Mr. McClintock, as an attack on our Capitol?
I would describe it as a riot.
As a riot. Okay. I'm going to read to you a tweet, or an X, whatever they call it these days, from January 6th, 2021, at 4 p.m. Quote, "The attack on the Capitol strikes at the most sacred act of our democracy, the peaceful transfer of power. It is an outrage and a threat to our most fundamental principles as a free people." That's from your Twitter account.
Yeah, I don't gainsay a word of it.
On January 6th. Well, you called it a riot. You denied it was an attack a few moments ago. These are your words, or at least whoever posted these from your account 4 years ago, in the throes of that particular day when we were all on the floor, as Mr.
I was outraged from it, and I'm still outraged by the people who broke our laws, who were violent, who vandalized our building. But we have to recognize that that was a relatively small group compared with a large number of people who came here simply thinking that they were exercising their right to protest.
Well, let me just distinguish this point, because again, that sounds very different than the way in which many members have characterized January 6th in the past. You're making this distinction with respect to individuals who committed violence or didn't commit violence. I'll read you another statement. "What happened here on January 6th was an affront to our Constitution and national disgrace. Those who entered the Capitol with the intent to disrupt the counting of electoral votes deserve to be denounced by their fellow citizens and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law."
Exactly.
That's yours. Well, that sounds very different than what you just said, that there were a couple of violent people.
No,
but the vast majority, well, hold on, Mr.
those who
McClintock.
broke into the chambers of the House, those who came here intending to disrupt our proceedings, I have no sympathy for.
Well,
but I don't think that describes the vast majority of the people who entered the building.
Belongs to the gentleman from Colorado.
I thank the chairman. The vast majority of those individuals, again, the broad way in which you framed it in your statement in July of 2022, a year later, that any individual who disrupted the proceedings or attempted to disrupt
who intended to disrupt them, yes.
the electoral counting procedures ought to be fully prosecuted under the law.
And I still believe that.
Well,
and I believe that the pardons of those people
sounds
were
very
a
different than what you're
mistake.
saying today, Mr. McClintock. I yield back. I know I'm out of time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much. And I am going to join my other colleagues and say simply thank you to the gentleman from California. Because earlier we had a conversation about facts. And the reality is that out of all your colleagues on that side, you are the only one that is courageous enough to actually say these are the facts. Whether you like what happened, hate what happened, agree that it should have happened, the facts are the facts. That's what happened. And so I appreciate you, because I think one of the things that we're getting frustrated about on this side is that there seems to be an attack on facts, so that when people put out fiction, that people will get drawn to that. So I appreciate you for not reimagining what happened as a beautiful day that was just a tour. But I will disagree with you to this extent. When you originally opened, you said that it wasn't an insurrection. And in my mind, I initially was like, it absolutely was an insurrection. And so if I read the definition from Google, it says a violent uprising against an authority or government. Call it what you like, but it fits the definition of an insurrection. And the other thing that I'll disagree with you about is you talked about having issue with the way that Joe Biden prosecuted them. I do want to clarify for the American people, if you are watching right now, that the President of the United States, at least historically how our presidents operated, the DOJ was separate, and you didn't have, attorneys that work for the DOJ saying that they are the president's attorney instead of the people's attorney, but that's where we are now. It wasn't the President of the United States that actually prosecuted anyone. It was his Department of Justice, I will say that. But I decided that I would go in because it seemed like you felt like there was a heavy hand for a lot of people. So literally, I just decided to look this up because I did not know the numbers. We've talked a lot about the fact that there's been 1,500 pardons, but we've never really kind of dug into the numbers. So January 6th of this year, there was an article that was put out that laid out, and this is from PBS, where it talks about kind of where the trials stood. So I'm assuming on January 20th, this number probably is still very much valid. There were 1,020 people that entered pleas of guilty. So regardless of what anybody thinks of the criminal justice system as somebody who did criminal defense, these defendants stood in front of a judge and said, yes, I am entering a plea of guilty. And they have to say voluntarily and freely before they can get through a plea. If a defendant ever says that it's not voluntary or it's not freely, then the judge rejects the plea. So that's number one. So 1,020 of them did that. There were approximately 250 defendants that went to trial, and it resulted in guilty pleas. They either went to a trial by jury or a trial by judge, but they were given an opportunity to decide if they wanted a jury trial or a trial by the court, and they went through their due process in that way. I will tell you that if I go back a little bit further, because I did not have the numbers from this article, if I go back just about 3 more months before this article came out, it said of all these pleas that we've heard of, 255 were for felonies. 255 out of 1,500 does not sound heavy-handed. That means the other people most likely enter pleas for misdemeanors. They only, when the people that still should be behind bars are the people that did what Eric talked about. The people that Enrique, whatever his name is, y'all know his name.
And will the gentlelady yield real quick? Quick question for you.
Okay.
In your experience as a lawyer, someone who defended people, what's a lawyer's obligation if someone says, no, I didn't really do this, I can't plead guilty?
We are not allowed to plea that person out. You can literally have your bar card snatched from you. It is unethical to enter a plea, and a defendant can get out of that plea if they say that they told us that they didn't do it and we told them to plea anyway. Then that could actually be our bar card. But the last thing that I was gonna say about Enrique is they let him out. He should still be behind bars, because then he went and he harassed our former officer, Fanone, just the other day. because he feels like he can do whatever he wants to, because he's now going to be lawless like the rest of these 1,500 people. And when we talk about being safe in our communities, this is what we're talking about. We should not be letting criminals just roam the street after they've gone through the process.
Time of the
Thank you,
gentlelady.
Mr. Chair. I appreciate you.